So, welcome to A Pledge to My Father, and this is exploring the song Yaba by Mira Awad, brought to you by Makom. As you can see, this is a screen grab from the YouTube video Yaba, which was directed and edited by the singer-songwriter as well. A little bit of background on Mira Awad. She was born in Rameh, which is a Palestinian village in the Galilee, as in within what is now known as the State of Israel, born to a Christian Palestinian father and a Bulgarian mother. She's famous for a great deal of her music, although you may actually have heard of her through a song that she performed together with Noah, with Achinoam Nini, There Must Be Another Way, which was Israel's entrant to the Eurovision Song Contest a few years back, although Mira Awad's reputation as a singer went way before she joined up with Achinoam Nini. She's also a very successful actress. Again, you will probably know her from her role in Arab Labour, where she performs the role of an Arab lawyer who ends up marrying a Jewish guy. But again, her work extends beyond Arab Labour. She's also an artist and a video artist and all sorts of amazing things. This song, Yaba, emerged in 2020 and is very much a personal exploration of her father's relationship to the land and her relationship to both. A little bit about Rameh, the village in which she was brought up. Rameh is in the Galilee area. This is a relatively current photograph of Rameh, but you'll see that Rameh was pretty famous even before the establishment of the state. This is an element from the original UN partition map in 1947, whereby the recommendation from the UN was that this land would be divided into two states, a state for the Jews and a state for the Arabs. And in this map, which doesn't show many cities, it does show actually the city or the town of Rameh. And you'll also notice it's in that browny sandy colour, which means that Rameh was originally intended to be part of the Arab state alongside the Jewish state to be partitioned in 1947. Obviously things didn't work out that way, and Rameh ended up being part of the State of Israel. Which brings us on to the Nakba. Most people in the Jewish world will know the events of 1948 as the War of Independence, whilst Palestinians will call exactly the same events the catastrophe, the Nakba. During the Nakba, during the War of Independence, which Israel won and declared itself a state, during this period, over 1948, a huge number of Arab Palestinian residents of this land were either driven out or left and were not allowed to return. And that had a massive impact on Palestinian society when you think that within a year the size of the Arab-speaking population dropped by 90%, from over 1 million to under 200,000. And its percentage size shifted from being 68% of the population to 18% of the population. The Jewish population 1 year before 1948 was under 30%, and after 1948 the Jewish population of this area was over 80%. And so this shift, massive cultural shift, political shift, national shift within a year, a lot of it brought about through the emptying of Arab villages, whether by choice and then not allowed to come back, or whether by force. Ikrit and Bir-Am are specific examples of Arab villages which were, to use a slightly neutral term, depopulated and then destroyed. This is what Bir-Am looks like now. Bir-Am in particular, again, was also on this map, Kafar Birim, up in the top. Folks who left Ikrit and Bir-Am, many fled and didn't return. Some were able to return, but not to those villages, and they ended up landing in Rameh. The other piece about Rameh is its olive trees. 800,000 dunam of olive fields were taken by the state, as in taken from inhabitants of Rameh and taken into ownership by the State of Israel. And they are apparently the best olives in the world. So now I recommend that you go listen to the song. Pay also special attention to the video. Both the video and the song were created by Mira Awad, and so we can very much see that this is her personal expression. And you'll see up in the top right with that little eye, you'll be able to click straight to the video with the translation, and meet you back here in a minute. So just for you, when you were looking at that video, what resonances arise when seeing this father living in an olive grove in a mixture between a domestic scene and a countryside scene? And what's been lovely about our work with Mira Awad is that she very generously has given us her own answers to these evocative questions. So you may want to use these questions with students or ask yourself these questions. And at the same time, we also have access to the answers of the artist, a Palestinian woman herself, who says that the father is portrayed as living in the middle of the olive grove to symbolize his connection with the place and how this grove and this land are his natural home. There's a key line in this song, "We are the ones still hanging on," sings Mira Awad, effectively of her generation hanging on nevertheless. What would you say Mira Awad's generation are hanging on to? Are they hanging on in the place, in the land? After all, Mira Awad is a citizen of the State of Israel, as is her father. Are they the ones hanging on as in staying in the land, or hanging on to a certain form of identity which has been stripped? When we asked Mira Awad, what does she mean by "we are the ones still hanging on?" she spoke to us of her family and her people's history. That in 1948 Jewish forces arrived in Rameh and asked Muslim and Christian citizens to leave their homes and move elsewhere. Their claim was that their displacement would be temporary and for their own safety, although Druze citizens were not evacuated. Some of the displaced people crossed the borders into Lebanon, and some stayed within the borders of what was then Palestine and now is Israel. When it was clear that the citizens could come back to their homes, borders were shut, and those who had not crossed were not allowed back in and were considered infiltrators. Some of them found ways to sneak in illegally and faced re-expulsions, or were made to carry red identity cards, distinguishing them from the blue ID card holders of an Israeli ID card. Some of the Awad family ended up refugees and found their way from Lebanon to Jordan. Some of them emigrated to Canada. However, Mira's grandfather, Habib, had managed to find refuge at a Druze family's house in Beit Jan, up the mountain overlooking Rameh, and hide until it was safe to return. Here you can see where Beit Jan is in relation to Rameh. Unlike some other villages that were destroyed by Jewish forces, Rameh was lucky to stay standing, and the family could return to their home. The villages lived under military regime until late into the 60s. These are the words of Mira Awad, giving us her personal and national story. Very evocative line. "We live in houses of stone, but feel in exile." So why would you say that this song is so mournful? After all, she's still in contact with her dad. He's doing fine. He's a doctor. Where is the sadness coming from? Which loss is being commemorated? Is it the loss of honor and respect, the loss of being a majority and now being a minority? Is it the loss of ownership of various areas? And or is it also the loss of the connection to the land that modernization and industrialization has brought about? Many sort of questions which emerge from this line that we're of course free to interpret in all sorts of directions, and we have the advantage of being able to listen in to what Mira Awad has to say. That although many Arab citizens of Israel, both Muslim and Christian, have high achievements in all walks of life, and are integrated in almost all fields of Israeli society, they do still suffer from discrimination and racism on varying levels. Some of it's institutional, but mostly cultural and political. Therefore, the younger generation Mira Awad represents might feel this kind of displacement in their own homeland, that they are home but not home. So they're in the stone, but they're not necessarily feeling at home. However, at the end of the song, Mira assures her father that she does not despair and that she is as rooted in this land as he is. I feel like a tree that has been in the land for generations. So what would you say is the significance of a tree in this context? A tree that's been in the land for generations. Mira Awad will explain to us that the olive tree has been a cultural symbol for the land and for peace for many peoples in this land. Over the past century, it has also become a symbol for the Palestinian people in particular, ancient, indigenous, enriching, and most importantly, highly resilient. Awad's tree is, however, restricted, imprisoned, referencing the restrictions Palestinian citizens of Israel feel regarding their identities and their opportunities. So we have this interesting interplay between being in one's homeland but not necessarily feeling at home. And here this line in particular tells us more. Our land is beneath our feet, but we have no homeland. And in particular, when we look at the images of the video whereby Awad's father is behaving as if inside a home, like a house home, with the table and the photos on the wall, but they're actually on a tree, but at the same time is clearly not in his home, not in a place of security or permanence. And likewise, Mira Awad herself says that here I play with the concept of house versus home, and how the feeling of home is connected to homeland. I have a home or a house, but not a homeland. Again, I'm addressing the dissonance that Israeli Palestinians feel with their Israeli citizenship. None of the national symbols, anthem and flag, the anthem talks about the soul of a Jew, the flag has a Magen David on it, or official ceremonies include the Palestinian citizens of Israel, and they're not allowed to commemorate their own catastrophe, the Nakba. All this leads to a chasm between state and citizen. So the final scene, when the singer joins up with her father in his home that's not a home, that's in his homeland of the Grove of Olives, would you say that the final scene is one of hope or acceptance or resignation? What kind of emotion emerged for you? And Mira Awad refers to the opening of the video where she's in her urban apartment, yearning for her father and for her land, and by the end of the video she's joined him. So the song culminates in going back to the origins and assuring my father that I am as rooted as he is, and I'm embracing his legacy of being the lighthouse for all to see the path in the dark. Therefore, the final scene is the daughter coming back to her roots, and the two generations meeting and connecting in the place where they both belong. Finally, a question for you, and obviously a question for Mira Awad. What memories of your parents do you identify with? Like, not necessarily memories that you have spent with your parents, but your parents' own memories. How do you connect to them? For Mira, she is in awe of both my parents' life journeys. I was lucky to be born to two amazing people. My father's story of resilience and victory over horrible circumstances is an inspiration for me. Although he remembers becoming a refugee, kicked out of his home by Jewish troops, he carried no hate for Jews and taught me and my brothers tolerance and compassion and treating everyone equally and seeking justice for all. My mother left her homeland in Bulgaria to follow my dad's mission, providing medical services to his community that suffered a great deal of discrimination and hardships back then. That's been the story behind Yaba, Mira Awad's pledge to her father. This has been brought to you in partnership with Moishe House and the generous funding of the Jim Joseph Foundation. This is Makom, the Israel Education Lab of the Jewish Agency. Thanks very much.